All right, let's call the meeting to order, and we'll start with introductions. I'll start to my left. If we could go around and you could just give your name and your affiliation, and then we'll do the folks online afterwards.
Okay. Julie Fallon, City of Fargo Transit Director.
Jenica Flanagan, City of Morehead Finance.
John Strand, City Commission.
Dave Griffith, MetroCog.
John Cole, Mobility Manager, MATBUS.
Nancy Morris, City Attorney, Fargo.
Alexander Thompson, Finance Director, City of Fargo.
Paul Swingen, City of Fargo Transit. Adam Olchenberg, MetroCog.
Aiden Young, MetroCog.
Peyton Mester with the City of Dilworth.
Deb White, Morehead City Council, and if we could go to our folks, I only see the one. I don't know, do we have any? Okay, Sebastian, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself.
Sebastian McDougall, Morehead City Council.
Hi, Denise Kolpak, Fargo City Commission.
Here we go. Other folks want to introduce themselves?
I'm Jean Henning. I'm the transit accountant for City of Fargo.
Good morning. I'm Megan Zaradka. I'm a finance manager at the City of Morehead.
Is there anybody that we missed? Okay, welcome everyone. Starting with item 1, I assume everyone had a chance to look over the agenda, and so I'll entertain a motion to approve the contents of the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And if we can move on to the minutes from the February 19th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I have one notation, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
thank you.
The minutes reflect that I was not there, which was correct. And then it later on, when we're approving the agenda, it has me seconding or making a motion there. So just want to make note of that.
Thank you for noticing
That's-
that. Yes. So I wonder if we could go back and just correct that and see who it was that actually made that motion. You didn't do it from Costa Rica then, right?
No, I tried.
Okay, thanks for noting that. Any other changes to the minutes? If not, could I have a motion to approve the February 19th, 2025 minutes? Okay, do I have a second? Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Moving on to our action items. Our first one will have an update on the Link FM final recommendation. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. So for those of you who weren't here in the last meeting, I had previously brought a recommendation to the board to completely eliminate all Link FM services in 2025 and further years. Based on some construction that'll be going on in and around the Morehead Center Mall location. Just essentially will make any downtown events for Link FM nearly impossible this year. There were a couple of questions and clarifications that were asked about that motion, so we tabled it for that meeting and we are bringing a final recommendation to you today. So just to go over some of those questions that came up, will the Minnesota Department of Transit allow Link FM to be operated outside of service hours for the Trollwood musical? How does Morehead receive funding for Link FM events, and will canceling Link FM events affect the funding in any way? A point was to inform event partners about the cancellation of Link FM, and they could be asked if they would like to participate in the service. Consider operating Link FM Pride in the Park or utilizing the state of Minnesota funded bus until it's retired in 2027 to allow Blue Stem time to develop alternatives in and out of their parking lot. And a point was brought up that Link FM should be continued as normal for the Celtic Festival due to the short amount of time between our last meeting and that event occurring. So just wanted to go over those points quick. You see in the first attachment, we did reach out to MnDOT regarding operating Link FM outside of our established service hours. We received confirmation back from Maddie Gurney over there that we will not be able to operate outside of the established hours. It was allowed for last year because we had a shift in our end time mid-year. So unintended consequence of that was not being able to service the Pride in the Park or the control with musical events that we had already committed to for that year. But going forward, based on his email back, and I had a brief conversation with him, that will not be allowed for us in this year and further years. So we also looked into exactly how Moorhead receives funding for Link FM events. It's included in the annual fixed route contract with MnDOT. MnDOT will need to be made aware of the change in service levels, but funds will not be returned to the state due to an anticipated overspend on that contract anyway. So the funds will be able to be utilized in other areas. So we made an attempt to contact all event partners. I believe that's the second attachment to the memo. Karen, the marketing manager, did that, reached out to all partners and got a response from a good majority of them outside of.
It's Dane Solberg from Pride Collective, or Pride, right? FM Pride.
Yep, Pride in the Park event and then Street Fair. We did not receive any confirmation either way from them. And what we had some internal discussions, and based on the construction that we're going to be seeing around the Moorhead Center Mall, it's just going to be impossible for us to do events in 2025. So regardless of if they would be willing to participate in funding any part of the service. So the Pride in the Park event can still be operated for the duration of the state-funded bus's life. Again, that's through 2027. So that will kind of come into play in the updated requested motion that we have today. And then we did operate Link FM as normal for the Celtic Festival. I unfortunately forgot to pull the ridership information to provide that today, but we did operate as normal for that. And then just kind of reiterating the point that due to the construction around Moorhead Center Mall, we will not be able to service any downtown events during the summer. So with that, I would like to make a requested motion, approve the elimination of all Link FM events outside of the Pride in the Park for the remainder of 2025 and subsequent years. And we will continue to serve as Pride in the Park until the state-funded bus runs its course and have to be replaced.
That's cool. Do we have questions or comments?
Yes, one of my comments is that we all have a lot of desire and hope to provide the service, that we'd like to. Our budget's pretty compelling. We don't have luxury to be doling out monies we don't have, and we have to put on our belts a few $1 million, several $1 million. And so we got to get that culture in our head. Me too. I'm saying, how can we resurrect this? How can we do this? We spend a lot of time on a $10,000 discussion when we have a $5 million discussion in front of us. So just saying, that's the lay of the land we're really in. The financial terrain that let's just always remind ourselves of that, or we're going to have other consequences down the road that I don't know what that would mean financially. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just noting.
And just to clarify, just to clarify that your broader comment that we're not talking about millions here for Link FM. That's just.
I mean, it'd be really nice, but it's a mindset. Nickel, if we watch our nickel ourselves, we have a lot of nickels to pay attention to.
Other comments? I'll just say I appreciate the staff working on this, and I think it makes sense, particularly with the events at the Yemcombs. They were very sparsely used to begin with, and so I don't see this as being tremendously impactful, and it's nice. The area that we did have it is obviously Blue Stem. We'll have to look for other things. If anything, it adds some urgency of us looking at ways of having other ways of working on some of the congestion issues in that area. And then we have the ability for at least one of the events to continue that. So again, allow us some time to work on making some changes that'll improve traffic control in those areas. So thanks.
Madam Chair, I don't know too, my sense is that, I don't know if it's this year or next year, Pride won't be in Southern Moorhead.
Yes, it will. Yeah.
Well, then maybe this might be the last. This is what I'm just hearing. I hear there's rumbling to move it again.
I don't know. I'm on the planning committee. And
so I'm hearing, but either way, that's just advice. I know they're meeting with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And along those lines, I know if you'd like, I can make sure that the chair, Thane Solberg, is made aware. So. Mhm. Okay, so we do have a recommendation in front of us. Is there a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
Yeah, this is Colpack. I'll move to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Oh, hearing none, let's do a roll call vote. Caught myself. Thank you, Adam.
Almelman,
Yes.
Flanagan.
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Colpack,
Aye.
Mastero,
Yes.
McDougal,
Aye.
Grant,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
did I miss anyone?
Okay, motion carries. Thanks, everyone. All right, we're going to move right on to our next action item. MATBUS driver services and transit recommendation, and I will turn things over to Julie and Cole for an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're gonna hopefully take up most of the rest of the meeting with this discussion. There's a lot of points that we're focused on trying to address and even how to move forward. I will say, starting up front, the motion that we proposed in there, we're going to propose tabling it going forward until the next meeting that we have of this committee. I'll dive into why we're thinking along those lines. So last month, February, and I went around and handed out the memo just so you wouldn't have to dig back in your old documentation. Jordan went through 2026 driver services points. He covered what we estimated for some of the costs and how we estimated them, and then possible implications to the vehicle insurance cost. So I'm just going to touch on that real quick. The vehicle insurance cost, we're still working with NADERF on that to get a price out of them when it comes to will there be any changes to those costs based on a couple of significant lawsuits that came the direction of the city of Fargo. So we're looking to set up a meeting in April in person to discuss that. But they are pulling together their proposals on what that would be. It does appear that there potentially could be, and maybe Nancy could talk to a little bit more, but potentially if we go with a contractor again, there could be increased rates for our insurance costs for the vehicles. And so Nancy, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. So what we're looking at is what are our options here with respect to the driver contract services. Right now, the drivers are covered to the first $2 million under the city of Fargo NDERF policy. NDERF is examining that coverage for a contract because it exceeds the amount of the statutory limitations. So the options may be to pay a higher premium to insure them to that level. Another option would be to have them covered up to the statutory limitations and have the contracted service provider pick up the rest of the insurance or go in-house. Those are the kind of, we see as the three options. If it's in-house, of course, they've got the limitation of liability that's applicable by statute. So we do anticipate a change in the end of policy premiums, regardless of which direction the city goes.
Thank you. So that's one significant piece of the consideration. So what we looked at with bringing forward our proposal is that we do have the end of life of the existing contract. We are in the final option year, as I'm sure you all here are aware, and it expires at the end of this calendar year. So if we are leaning towards going back out for bids again and doing that RFP process, that's a heavy, significant lift of an RFP. It's a minimum 6 months from start to finish. On the last go round, which was in 2020, with the contract starting in January of 21, we looked at what changes that brought about. And we had 3 bidders that bid on that work. It's a field where not a lot of companies are left to bid on doing that work. Last time that was Transdev, Halcon, and help me out, Cole.
National Express.
Thank you, National Express. So those were the ones that bid on the work that is here in the metro area. Transdev did get the contract at that point in time, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of the numbers here shortly. I'm just kind of covering the top level stuff here right now. But the numbers at that time, I believe it was close to a 25% increase that we had when we went from the process of continuing with option years. And the federal guidelines that we have for procurement services, if you're procuring services, you can't go beyond a 5-year life of a contract. So we did a contract that was a 2-year agreement with 3 1-year options so that we had the opportunity to renegotiate and exercise those options as we went through the process. So the life of the contract from year to year, when we did have them under agreement, we've got those numbers in here too. But it wasn't as significant a change year to year as it was when we actually rebid the entire project. So, and the difference that we would have here would be that, Fargo would be the only one contracting with any company. And Moorhead wouldn't be doing that again since we're managing the services for the whole metro area. So just a quick point out there. So the services that we get from our contractor currently, the way it stands is we've got drivers for fixed routes in the entire metro area, drivers for paratransit in the same geographic areas that provide service. The one piece that we do differently is on Sundays, where we currently have no fixed route service. And the federal guidelines say if you don't offer fixed route, you do not need to offer the complimentary paratransit. But many, many years ago, prior to me, there was a decision made that the cities would provide service for paratransit only on Sundays. So that is one service. They also provide Transdev / First Transit. They provide management, safety oversight training, road supervision of all the drivers, and then they also have an office clerk that they have. And like I said, in the past, we've had separate contracts. Currently, we have everything. So what we were looking at is what opportunities are coming up. We rebid the contract. That is an option that we do. We're up against the clock on it. So if we follow down that option, that's going to take us well into the end of the year before we know where we stand with what dollars would be for proposing services. Or as we've talked, hire the drivers and their management staff as City of Fargo employees, which would have to coincide with expiration of the existing agreement to avoid any service interruptions in the future. So rebid the current contract. Like I said, it's labor intensive, and there would be, if you're going to do it right, you have to have at least 6 months. There's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of details to a contract like this, a lot of complexity to it. The regulatory framework that we have from the feds is pretty significant. And so I just put in a few things in there that any contractor or the city itself would have to follow, existing CDL requirements, training that comes along, criminal background checks, all the stuff that feeds into what we're looking at. The other opportunity is to hire drivers and their management staff into the city. Currently, what we're looking at is we would hire 80 drivers, 6 senior drivers, And the senior drivers would actually be drivers that would participate in the training for behind the wheel and what we call cadetting. So where the new driver actually drives the bus, but there's a senior driver with them, observing and providing his input and assistance. So the creation of the senior driver positions would negate the need that there would be any differential pay for training hours. 5 road supervisors, the management staff, as we have them listed there. And then temporary non-benefited, currently TransDev has 12 part-time non-benefited positions. We would propose 6. We think we could do it with less. One of the big discussions that we had was about benefits, the deduction. What would that likely look like? And so we based it on the City of Fargo Human Resources assessment that they did this past fall, that about 12% of existing employees would not take full benefits. So we estimated that 88% of employees would take full benefits. That's the cost that we plugged into what we were looking at. We know that's not very likely what's going to happen, but we wanted to estimate on the high side. And then any overtime costs, we did build that into our proposal. Some of the advantages we feel would be that hiring them into the city, they would receive higher wages than they currently do under the existing contract. The benefits far exceed what the contractor proposes right now. For example, the full coverage for family members, the drivers have to pay $1,300 a month out of their own pockets for that. It's significantly lower for the city. There would be no union restrictions. Currently, there's a union in place. That would go away at the end of the life of the existing contract. We have no obligation beyond that to do anything for union. More flexible scheduling, increased retention and job satisfaction. We feel we wouldn't see as much turnover. And there's a few numbers that we've got why we came up with that conclusion. And then I think the big one is that city staff, would have control over the entire operation, including hiring of employees, and all aspects of it. We would have our own training materials. They would be similar to what is being done now. But right now, as well, the contractor does a lot of training that has nothing to do with us, that is specific to their organization. So it's First Transit, TransDev information. So all of that peripheral stuff would be eliminated. Just as a reminder, in the past, we did bring on, and I think it was in 20 or 21, 19.
They officially became staff members beginning of 2021.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Where we hired on the dispatchers that had been fixed route dispatchers, we brought them on board. That has been highly successful. And if you talk to any of those employees that had been with the contract, currently with the City of Fargo, they're happy to fill you in on how successful that has been. They're just a lot happier with their jobs. And feel that no offense to the existing contractor, poor Matt, he's here, he's the GM for our local contractor. I'm not trying to say bad things about you guys. But anyway, so it has been very positive for them. And yeah, like I said, you're welcome to talk to any of them because they'd love to share it with you. And then a few other points that we talked about that we're covering. TransDev, their schedules right now, they have a variety of different work schedules. So they have what they call bid packs, and every season change. So academic year versus non-academic year, they put a new bid pack out, and the drivers get to choose based on seniority what shift they're interested in driving. And so consequently, what happens is we have newer drivers that get to the end of the list and they get stuck with the hardest routes. So we're getting a lot of feedback from our riders about the challenges with Route 15 in Fargo is the perfect example. Trying to keep that route on time and still serve what it's supposed to serve and do what it's supposed to do and get folks where they're going. It's very challenging when you have all new drivers on there. They also have varying schedules. So some of the bid picks are 34.08 hours, some are 39.97. Some of it has to do with the way that their union agreement is set up. So the union agreement is actually between Transdev and the Teamsters. The city of Fargo is not party to that agreement. So just as a clarification for that purpose. And then looking at what we would anticipate, we feel that with some software that we're working on, it's just a module that we would add to some existing software that we have. We would be able to come up with it does do automatic scheduling for those purposes. We plug in, what do you want? What do you think? What revenue hours and such are you doing? We're currently, Matt and his team, they do it manually. It's quite an undertaking to watch them do that. So we feel that we could be more efficient with that and potentially eliminate a couple driver positions that we wouldn't need. Like I was saying before, the new contract years, so 2016, 2021, driver contract went up 15% in 2016 when everybody bid on it, 25% in 2021. So we're not sure what would happen moving forward if we go out for bids, what we would get back. We covered the part with insurance. A big part of what Matt and his management staff do is spend a great deal of time with their corporate reporting and requirements that would no longer be a time commitment for any of them. That's why Matt works 80 to 85 hours a week. So does his staff every week. I mean, that he might as well live there and not bother having his own residence outside the area. So anyway, one last point that we felt was important is that the Transdev's driver retention, they provided that to us, was 53% for last year. So we feel strongly that improving morale and benefits as a cohesive team would make a lot of difference for our department. And much of the time that is spent hiring new drivers and the turnover and the retention going forward would be vastly improved if we could bring them in-house. So originally we had a requested motion here. I am going to request that we table that, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And work between this meeting and our next meeting for this committee. And I'll be soliciting some of you to help with that, to really get a solid footing on what it is that we want to bring forward. We do have, like Commissioner Strand was saying, budgetary constraints. So we want to trim some of the services out of our department. So I'm saying service like on the road, boots on the ground service. And so Cole and I are working on that. Jordan, when he gets back from vacation, he'll be brought into that. I worked with Transdev yesterday to go over a bunch of stuff to come up with some suggestions on what we can do for service impact. And then Cole, if you want to do the rest of it, and then we can all talk at the end.
Yeah. So just want to dive into the presentation after the memo here. We covered quite a bit of kind of the rationale behind why we're looking at this. So I'm going to be skipping to page 4, which is the proposed organizational chart. So this just kind of gives a look at exactly if you brought Transdev in-house, where the positions would fall, who they would fall under, and kind of the new structure with those positions. So everything that you see in blue is an existing position with Transdev that would be brought into the city. And we're also requesting a few additional new positions to help supplement that. So there is a majority of the TransDev staff would fall under our operations division. So that is our fixed route paratransit services. That includes the operations manager, the operations supervisor for fixed route, road supervisors who assist drivers out on the road, provide training, that sort of thing, as well as the drivers themselves. So that falls into that left portion there. And then the other piece of TransDev operations is the safety and training, which would fall under the Assistant Trans Director of Fleet and Facilities, or Jordan. So with that, we're looking at a safety and training manager. They would cover all of our drug and alcohol testing, which is currently done through the City of Fargo's HR department. With all those new employees in-house, we have to meet additional FTA requirements to do certain percentages per year to show that we're actively monitoring our drivers for drug and alcohol use on the job. So that's one part of that position, and then also training. As stated before, last year under TransDev, there was a 53% turnover rate. So we expect that will be higher or will be lower under the City of Fargo, but at the same time, we'll still have people coming in and out. So making sure that that training is as good as it can be to prepare those new drivers to start on route. As well as one additional office associate position, currently TransDev employees, office manager. Her duties currently are mostly TransDev corporate responsibilities, payroll, that sort of thing. So if that position is brought in-house, it would essentially do the same thing under the City of Fargo. Again, having so many new employees, there'd be a lot of time card keeping, answering benefits questions, that sort of thing. So being a resource for those new drivers. Then moving on to the next page. This is a bit of a deep dive into the previous contract years that we've seen with TransDev. Back in 2016 and 2021, those were our new contract years when we had exercised all of our option years. You can see in 2020 or 2016, it was approximately a 9.88% increase from that previous contract. In 2021, it was a 24.26% increase. So that's essentially where we're basing our idea that we'll be coming in fairly high if we do go out for a new driver services contract. It's difficult to estimate where exactly that's going to fall, but we have heard from previous management at TransDev that since First Transit was bought out by TransDev, they are going to be looking for a larger profit margin than the previous company was. So you can just kind of see some detailed information there. As Julie had said, there were a couple of companies that had bid each time for that contract, but there are additional startup costs if we do decide to go to a company other than TransDev. So another thing to keep in mind with that. And going to the next page, this is a summary of what we're looking at for the budget if drivers are brought in-house. So a couple of things to kind of consider for that. We're looking at a total of $9,044,000 approximately for the total in-house driver budget. Our previous budget in 2025, and I apologize for not including this in there, is $8,331,000. So a difference of approximately $712,000, which is a 8.56% increase from last year or from this current year. So with that in mind, it is still an increase, but again, we're assuming that if we go out for a new contract, it's going to be significantly higher than that. A couple of things that came into our estimates for this. We did utilize the City of Fargo's HR new position calculator for salaries and benefits, so that we make sure that that is all accurate in there. We don't know what the cost of living adjustment, if there is going to be one for 2026, is going to look like. So we're just estimating 3.5% increase for that. Looking at overtime, we did confer with some of the staff at TransDev, kind of exactly what that looked like. In 2024, they had approximately $140,000 worth of overtime. So we're estimating 2% to give us generous coverage for that, to make sure that all of our shifts are covered, that people are able to still maintain routes. The proposal includes the current driver night and weekend pay differential that is currently going on through TransDev. So we saw a very big increase in applicants after we initiated that. So that's something that we would like to continue forward within the city. The proposal would eliminate paying additional safety and incentive bonuses that TransDev currently offers. With that, we see that as kind of a balance between bringing drivers in-house and offering better benefits and as well as longevity benefits and a couple of other bonuses that way. There are also a couple of non-salary based expenses that we have included in here. Under the miscellaneous category, other services includes a software that TransDev currently purchases called DriveCam. Essentially what that is on the road observation of drivers. So it automatically triggers an alert to management staff or training staff if something is considered unsafe for drivers, like a rolling stop, that sort of thing. And that alerts them to view that video, take a look at exactly what that driver was doing and address that right there and then. So it seems like it's a good opportunity for drivers to be able to learn, for management staff to be able to make sure that our drivers that are out there that don't have direct supervision are still doing what they're supposed to. So we definitely see that as something that we're going to continue again within the city. And then a few other miscellaneous smaller expenses, additional cell phone services for management staff currently with TransDev, as well as general supplies for that $600, which would just be a time clock for drivers to check in and check out. So this initial budget is based on transitioning drivers with a similar salary to what they are currently making within TransDev. So we have drivers that are anywhere from, I believe it was 2470 or somewhere around there at the low end to 2150 at the or 3150 at the high end. So just trying to take into account their uses of service with TransDev, but that's where our initial base is with this budget. And I'll just move on to, let's see, I think Julie covered most of the points on page 7. So I'll just jump over to page 8 for the implementation timeline. So first and foremost, we do want to present this to everyone to make everyone aware kind of our thought process, all the work that we've done to go into driver salaries, estimated budgets, all of that, so that we can potentially bring something forward to this year's budget team for the city of Fargo. So that is what we're working on currently. If we receive approval, we'll begin working on driver training materials. Again, we'll be basing them at least somewhat off of what TransDev currently offers for training, but to make it a little bit more personalized for City of Fargo operations, work with the marketing team and operational staff to be able to develop that. We'll also work with the City of Fargo HR staff to develop a hiring timeline. Again, we wouldn't bring the drivers on until the beginning of 2026, but just kind of looking at exactly how that would play out so that we're able to get job descriptions out there, go through interviews and anything that we can do ahead of time. And then updating any departmental policies and procedures to affect the staffing change. So make sure that everything's up to date and accurate. Again, and then through summer 2025 into winter 2026, it'll just be bringing the drivers as close to in-house as we can without actually making them City of Fargo employees at that point. So anything that we can get done ahead of time to kind of lessen that burden as we transition into 2026. Winter 25 into winter 26, we begin utilizing the new staff. And then in fall 2026, we would like to take a step back and evaluate our efforts to make sure that it's going to according to plan, that we're sticking within budgetary constraints and just seeing if there's any efficiencies that we've noticed or anything that can be improved with bringing drivers in-house. So just an opportunity to report back to City of Fargo administration as well as this board as to whether or not it's successful for us. And with that, so I guess we're open to any questions that anybody has.
Wonderful. Again, I'll just say that, because we have some lingering questions, we are not going to take action today, but we do have a very tight timeline. So to be as productive as possible, if we could get any questions or comments out there, so that, as soon as we're able to move forward, we can do that. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Oh, go ahead.
I'll start.
Yes, yeah.
Julie, you mentioned this kind of this next month, looking at the service level. So what all will that entail?
Well, actually, it's gonna start with a meeting right after this to take a look at mostly the Fargo and West Fargo routes. But I know there's been financial developments on the Moorhead side for maintaining service over there. But because we're also involved in the TDP right now, coming out, that's gonna be part of our discussion with them too, is to see if they have any suggestions, but I don't think at this point we're intending to impact any Moorhead service. That's not what, because you guys can fund it. So that's our intention right now. Yeah, we wouldn't make any moves like that without you guys.
Yes, that was very similar to my question. If, in the future, if we had to, so say we do see, again, because of budgetary constraints, if City of Fargo has to significantly reduce their, what they're able to put into transit, would we make changes in services based on that, a proportional reduction within the City of Fargo and not spread it across all of the entities? Is that?
Well, and I think this is our first year kind of with this new plan, and this was our first budget year. And so those are concerns I have. If Fargo needs to reduce it by X amount, that means overall it probably needs to decrease by more because the trickle down effect. So I think we're all going to need to work on this budget together, because what would additional services to Horace and West Fargo mean to the whole group as a whole? And that plays very strongly into this contract service versus in-house, because you needed to do it this way, apples to apples to see the comparison, but that's not what this is going to look like when we get done with this budget. And that's my concern with having to put this out for contract. We can't tell them what it's going to look like. I don't think we know what our services are going to be and how many drivers we need, but bringing it in-house needs to create efficiencies. And my concern with what we're showing right now is it really doesn't. What this math is missing is, as part of the overall plan last year, we talked about adding an HR person. We can't bring 100 people into the City of Fargo without more help. This is a heavy lift. These are needy positions. They turn over regularly. It's a lot of work for HR. So, that's not included in this. So I think we're underestimating the amount of work it's going to be to supervise this kind of group with training and drug testing. And so I think we need to demonstrate that there's more savings, and we need to look at how we can tighten up some of the overhead issues.
I have two comments related to that. One, going back to the issue of service that, that unfortunately, when we think about it, even if we did say reduce it proportionally based on the changes in what Fargo's able to put into the service, we're one community. And so, while you may not reduce the routes in Moorhead, but a person in South Moorhead who's trying to get their job at West Acres will be impacted if we reduce the routes in Fargo. And so, it is detriment, will impact everybody adversely. And then I did want to go back to your other question too, because I know we'd asked, I think Mike Greets asked last time, and Julie and I were talking about it. Could we get some of that information about what the HR costs? Because I don't see that broken down in here. I know we talked about it would be an indirect cost, but what would that additional cost be for HR? And it sounds like you think maybe it's, would be even a little higher than what we initially anticipated.
I think it would be a full FTE.
Yeah.
And similar on that original org chart, it showed that as belonging to a transit, like Jean's position is now.
I believe we did look at that in some iteration of this. I think it was last year probably that we estimated the cost for that. And I want to say between salary and benefits, it was just shy of an additional $100,000 for the position. So I can definitely shore up those numbers and get you accurate, up-to-date information on that. If it does require a full-time position, that should be pretty easy to calculate.
Looking at what we've been through recently with the drug and alcohol audit and utilizing HR staff, our intention and what's in the proposal is we would have our own safety person within our organization, like Transnet currently does. So we would want to retain that position. I do not anticipate that we would want HR doing that function for us. That would be something that we would pull back from HR and do just internally with proposed staff.
Potentially, if you do see a dedicated position for transit, you might see some of the indirect costs decrease.
Your question?
Yeah, I just have one
Yeah.
more. Well, because when I looked at the org chart too, that was kind of my first thought was just that administrative burden. I mean, the HR, but also like the finance staff too, and taking that on. So that one office associate that you say that's coming over from TransDev, so that, would that be more of an extension of the payroll function? Is that kind of how you see that?
Yep, that'd be perfect.
Because all of these people would then end up being on Kronos, or do they have a separate? Okay.
They would all be in there.
Yeah, they would.
So we imagine that's gonna be a fairly heavy lift,
Yeah, for sure.
coordinating time off requests and all that, making sure the staffing's good.
That will be a heavy lift.
And that would be the expectation, is the position that does it now for transit would do it for us. Right.
That's the office assistant position that does that.
Correct.
Just going to pause and make sure, do we have anybody online that has questions or comments? Other questions or comments?
One more question.
Yep.
Sorry. Just as far as the budget piece of it goes, like, what do you guys kind of see as a timeline for having that?
Like, it's in sync.
Well,
I know you guys have.
we just sent our stuff out to start having department heads work on them on Monday, so we're hoping to get it back by April. But, then that's when we actually start all the conversations. So April to May to June is really our timeline. I think it would be helpful, Julie and her team, for their budget, but also for yours, if we all probably sit together and say, big picture, what can transit afford and what can't it afford, so we can start drilling down. So I would suggest we do that sooner rather than later, like within the next, probably prior to the next meeting.
Yeah.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And would that be you, Jenica, or Megan? Combination?
Both of us, if you'll take.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, we'll take whatever help we can get.
And then have you guys heard much more from the state, North Dakota State Legislature? Is it kind of the same as it was last month?
Yeah, well, actually, okay, so it went through the whole Senate side of the House. And then it made it through crossover. It went through the House Transportation Committee. They recommended to do pass. It made it through their appropriations rather quickly. And now we're just looking at, is there a way to get the funding back up to a higher dollar amount? And then it would go into the DOT budget, and we are still looking at, not that we would turn any money down, of course, but looking at hopefully allowing us to propose a different distribution formula than what DOT is proposing. So it does look like we will get money, not as much as we had hoped. But not everything is done yet. So Senator Boucher I just talked to him a couple times this week, and he's talking to DOT and he's talking to other areas of the.
What else that legislation includes though is a study. So, if they set some money for this biennium, hopefully we can work with them. And, whatever comes of this budget and our issues and whatever cuts we need to make, that needs to factor into their consideration for the study and justifying that we need additional funding.
And I really hope that they fund that study. Apparently they have several hundred requests for studies, and they only fund, far less than 100 of them. So, because we've done this every biennium, right? You go out there and you ask for money, and then the rural transit properties in North Dakota, which are the majority of them, they're asking for money under a different bill. And I mean, so you have the state aid that's already allocated and it's not adequate for either the urbans or the rurals. You would think they'd certainly want to do a study that would help identify a long-term sustainable source of funds for us, so. They do ask a lot of questions about how Minnesota does it, so I agree. Yeah, I do.
We've been talking a lot about it.
Yes, yeah, all good, all good.
So my sense is too, historically, sometimes they used to use the word hog housing, but not uncommonly, a study is a way to kill a bill. Just so we're cautious. I mean,
Yeah.
it might be a way of kicking the can down the road, and not getting action.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good.
Worries me sometimes.
Yes.
Good point. All right. Any other discussion?
So if we're gonna table this to next month, what different things do you want to see? What conversation do we want to have next month? What things should be working on?
Well, I think it sounds as though, I don't think we have any other questions other than there was a few things of information like regarding the HR costs and things like that. It sounds like more of this, that what we have in front of us may be changing, right? And so we can't really make a recommendation until we see something that's a little more firm, correct? But are there any other questions that you would, any other information that people would like, so that when we can meet again on this, if we have something a little more solid, that we can take action?
I don't know, I mean, Susan, for you too, like, I'd just like to see, I guess, the full picture. So you can see that we balance, right? That we're able to.
Yes, that would
Right?
be ideal. Yes. I don't know if we can get there in a month, but.
But if we, at least have an idea.
Like, what would it take? I think that I don't have a good grasp on what it's gonna take to reduce $2 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. And I think, I just don't know that I know what that's gonna look like. And I don't know that any of you do either. So. we need to
Anybody has
figure
$2
that out.
million as a revenue source that we can bring in.
That'd be you.
What percentage of the overall budget is that again?
I mean,
It's, since the overall transit, is it 10 or 12 million? 12, so, yeah. So it's a significant.
Like a sixth of the whole budget,
Yes.
slashing that, okay. And of that, what percent is Fargo's contribution? I mean, how much has Fargo put in?
Oh, I don't know if I look at it that way.
I would say
overall.
you're over half, right? But not much over half or something. I mean, so really, that would be, you're looking at maybe cutting it up to like a third of Fargo's current commitment.
Well, how I look at it is the overall deficit that Fargo covers is $5.5 million. And that is up from, 10 years ago, $1 million, that was 2.5 before COVID. And we need to get back in that 2.5 at the max. So
That's about 50, cutting it by about 50%.
Our deficit, yes. But I don't know, I can't picture without doing the math, how that trickles down with the whole new funding formula. And I think that's the brand new element of this. So we need to look at that. But, issues like what would bringing more routes to like a West Fargo and a Horace, it might add more costs overall, but if it's being, absorbed there, then how does that trickle down to the rest of us? I think those are some scenarios we need to run.
Yeah, and it's tough when we're looking, I'll just say as a city leader from one of the cities that, we are doing this together. And there's an expectation that we're all going to that we've committed ourselves to maintaining the service. And it's really scary if one of the major partners is looking at such a huge reduction in their commitment. And especially when we've invested so much of saying, we're doing this together, we're, moving in this direction. That's at this point in the game, that's really scary. To be blunt. I don't know if that's something the leaders of the city should be getting together and talking about that, but it's not,
We've been talking with Michael, and I think that is something that he'll probably talk with Dan about at least,
Mhm,
maybe the mayors as well. I mean, that is the challenge.
mhm.
We all don't have the same skin in the game, and we need to make these decisions together, but we can't continue to pay at this level.
Well, I do sympathize with the challenges that the city's facing. Any other questions or comments?
I just wonder if there's any other ways to skin the cat. So we should all pay attention to other jurisdictions or cities and states doing things that we can really learn from. We're not the first ones to have this happen, but and I mentioned the other day, but like upstate Rochester, New York, the school buses are combined with the bus system. I don't know. I just don't know. But McLaughlin has 100 buses over there. Maybe there's ways we can get efficiencies. I don't know, with duplicity or multiple provisions of service with different types of service, different jurisdictions. And I think Julie, somebody said you can't have kids in buses. I don't know, but look, let's just watch for anything we can come up with that helps us pull in our belts and provide the service and be efficient. And stay committed to the service to the people in need. That's really what it's about.
Mhm.
But we might have a few years from now, I don't know, we'll look like what we look like now. With the changing world, for all we know, autonomous flying vehicles will be on our radar before we know it. I'm serious. Huh.
Hmm.
And then where do they land? Anyway.
Yeah, and I think, we should always be looking for efficiencies. And I think that if there's any indication that the staff hasn't been doing that, I haven't seen that. I think that it seems as if they run a pretty tight ship. But again, it's something we can always look at. But I think the way you go about doing that is not cutting 50% of your commitment at one time. And so that kind of a drastic move will be, I just can't see how that wouldn't be devastating to the service that we provide. So it's how you make that transition. Of course, we should always be looking for efficiency, but we also have to honor the commitment that we've made. Do it in the best way possible, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either.
Yeah, that's a good point, Deb. I don't know if there's a way to phase some of that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I don't know, Susan.
No.
So what I hear, Madam Chair, is Julie and our transit team, you're gonna be looking at the micro detail of this. But what I'm also hearing is a balcony view of the leadership of the jurisdictions involved. Madam Chair, I think I'm hearing that from you, that we should really make sure that communication levels taking place right now, especially in the background.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Schrank. I do think it's important because again, if we are as a jointly saying we're entering into this commitment that we will have shared services. But if one of the entities is looking at drastically changing that affects all of the entities. So, all of the partners in this. And so that needs to be discussed at that level as well.
So there's a subcommittee working on the detail here, but is there a subcommittee, is that the same thing?
Well, it sounds like at the city manager level,
Something formal,
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Yeah, I've talked to Dan about discussing
Good.
here too, so.
Yeah. Right, any other discussion? If not, again, thank you to the staff for the work that you're doing behind the scenes to bring this information forward. Thanks to the committee for your patience on this. And we look forward to some more information and moving ahead. Now we'll move on to our last item, informational items from Cole on safety and security.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
We need a motion to table.
Thank you. Yes, I think we do. Okay, do I have a motion to table the recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Do we have a second? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, we could get a roll call vote.
Almelman,
Yes.
Flanagan.
Yes.
Griffith,
Yes.
Colpack,
Aye.
Mascara,
Yes.
McDougal,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
White.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, cool. I'll turn it over to you.
So just want to give a pretty brief update today. As in past meetings, I've included all of the security related feedbacks that we received between the last committee or committee meeting and this committee meeting. So feel free to review and read through those as you have time. I guess I just wanted to give one quick update that our security staff is currently in the process of upgrading to higher quality body cameras. They had some when they initially came into this new contract back in the beginning of February, but they're working on getting some better ones. Besides that, we've seen very good communication with them. We just met with their operations manager a couple days ago, and just having that open communication with them compared to our previous security companies seemed to help address issues very quickly. I guess besides that, unfortunately, we still definitely want to meet with Fargo PD and kind of create the committee or task force that was mentioned before, but with all this other budgetary stuff kind of getting in the way, we haven't had a lot of opportunity to do that, but look forward to bringing more updates in future meetings.
Questions or comments? Well, I just was wondering, I noticed, I had mentioned this to Julie, there's a lot of the incidents on this month's report were related to loitering. I know that the warming center was moved this year to 25th Street South. Have we seen an uptick in loitering?
I don't think so. We definitely see it more so in the mornings when we initially open, but besides that, we've had pretty consistent compared to previous years.
And my other question is, and I think Julie said you have been doing this, I noticed that a lot of the calls were to the non-emergency number, and I just wondered, is there ways that we could do more with street outreach, mobile outreach, things to just thinking for the staff at the GTC, like things to provide additional support. And I understand that the street outreach is also strained, but.
Yeah, they definitely have their contact information. I think it's just the street outreach's hours of operation make it a little difficult. I will say another thing too is one of the security guards that was with this new company, Signal Security, tended to lean towards the confrontational side, I guess. There was an incident that he was let go, and the current staff that we have now is definitely much more conversational, de-escalating. So we have definitely seen, and you guys will see this in the next month's report, we've seen a drastic decrease in the number of these feedbacks that we were seeing. So more peacefully de-escalating situations, I think internally is helping a lot too.
Great. Any other questions or comments? If not, that is our last item and we are adjourned. I'm going to say what the date is on our next meeting, but I don't have that in front of me. It's April 16th. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Hopefully things will be starting to green up by then. Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you.